What's up, everybody? What's up? I had a boo boo there. So let's get it started. Let's get it started. So yeah, this Super Mike. We're gonna do a little show about This Is War by Zip Code by Dr. Wesley Muhammad. He gave us something good to work on. Whoever heard of Trina, Alabama? I know everybody heard of coronavirus, but I think it's Triana, Alabama. Triana, Alabama. And, and it's a 75% black populated town. A town that's black populated. 75%. Right. Yeah. So looks like what happened here in this city. I want to show everybody where it's at, and I'm just going to kick this on so we can get it moving. I'm going to just read straight out, and I'll look if anything I need to look up. I'll look it up as we go. But all right. So look, it says, "What's in your salmon?" The Tuskegee experiment, part 3. Trina, a town poisoned by DDT. So let me go through this here. Uh, DDT. I looked it up already. So DDT is a metabolite of DDE, which is dichloro diphenyl dichloroethylene. It's a known carcinogen, meaning it causes cancer. Chemical formula is C14HgCl5. So that's 14 carbons, 9 hydrogens, and 5 chlorine pieces. So first of all, that's chemicals. Remember what we talked about before. Chemicals are the actual letters of the universe, and you need letters to make words, and words you use to create spells, right? So they're using chemistry here. And so this particular town, and I'm just going to keep reading. So Trina is a small town in rural settlement. It's a small rural settlement in northern Alabama with a population that is 75% black, black on black, black on black. The poor black residents are largely subsistent anglers. So they depend on fish caught in the Indian Creek and Tennessee River. While the U.S. Army, through Monsanto Chemical Company, was poisoning the air, water, and food of the people of Anniston, Alabama, which we talked about before, with PCBs, the U.S. Army, through Oil and Chemical Corp, was poisoning the air, water, food, and people of Triana with DDT, which was introduced during the World War II as an insecticide. The DDT that poisoned the town of Triana was manufactured 6 miles away on the grounds of the Army Redstone Arsenal, adjacent to Huntsville from 1947 to 1971. Oil Corp, who was leased the Redstone property in 1958, released the DDT contaminated water into brick-lined trenches that ultimately released into Huntsville Spring Branch and Indian Creek, both of which emptied into the Tennessee River. The polluted water contaminated the fish, the catfish, perch, carp, goldfish, and gar, which the black residents of Triana consumed. The residents got highly contaminated. 99% of the U.S. population of Triana has 99% of the U.S. population has DDT in their blood. So all of us, because of this chemical creation that these people have been doing. So this is where our cancers are coming from, guys. Because a lot of us know that cancers were rare back in the day. People didn't get cancer like that, dying like that, especially black folks. But today, it's normal. 99% of the U.S. population has DDT in their blood. And the average DDT level in people 12 to 74 years at that time was 15 nanograms per milliliter. A 1979 CDC analysis of Triana blood samples found that the average sample had DDT levels of 159.4 nanograms per milliliter, which is over 100 times higher than the average person at that time. They found that DDT was higher in the blacks than in the whites, and higher in the males than in the females. Of course, the mayor of Triana from 1974 to 1984, Clyde Foster, who was also a NASA administrator, and he was a director of the Equal Opportunity Office at NASA Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, from 1956 to 1957. He was a mathematician technician for the Army Ballistic Missile Agency at Redstone Arsenal itself. He said that the state and federal agencies knew of excessive levels in the fish consumed by Triana residents for years, but refrained from making the information public because they wanted to use them as guinea pigs. See? Now, ask yourself, how many times has this happened? How many times is this happening to us as black folks? You know, ask yourself that. Click the thumbs up, guys, if you see it. What's up? Yeah, I mean, you know, they just continuously poison us, and we pretend like, what can you do? You got a government. Now, this is what I want to know. Why do we want to integrate into a system, a government full of people, full of thousands and thousands of people through generations who want to poison us and using us as guinea pigs and using their own people as guinea pigs? No wonder we don't trust the news when they talk about coronavirus and the amount of death that they claim is going on. So, according to the until 1979 New York Times report, in that year, the CDC swooped into conduct the most extensive inquiry to date into the effects of long-term consumption of food contaminated with high levels of DDT. So this basically was a open air guinea pig study on this particular black town here. The study was, according to the Times, intended to determine what health problems, if any, could be correlated with high levels of consumption of DDT. In a previous study, a small number of volunteers were given an oral intake of 35 milligrams of DDT a day, about twice that of the highly exposed DDT industrial workers for 21 months without measurable health effects. This explains the indifference towards the well-being of the Triana residents, as Dorsa E. Taylor observes. Though, excuse me, though evidence of DDT contamination was identified as early as 1948 and research indicating that the chemical might be harmful to humans began surfacing in the 1950s, blacks who lived close to the oiling plant, who drank the contaminated water and ate large quantities of toxic fish were not tested or alerted to the problem till 3 decades, 30 years after the problem was identified. So we're talking about generations. The Tuskegee experiment all over again. Further evidence of deliberateness in this case is this small detail. The 1980 CDC study revealed that Triana residents had high levels of polychlorinated bisphenols, which is PCBs, which are cancer causing. This is why our children are getting cancer, which we know didn't happen. And anybody who feeds their children these pizza rolls and those little blue little box foods that's in the stores, it's almost like child abuse, because kids are getting leukemia and cancers and stuff like that, and the doctors, they won't tell you what it is, but it's the diet now, and also there's other things. It could be environmental, but they definitely knew it was environmental here in Triana, Alabama here. So this explains the indifference towards the well-being of, so basically, here's another detail. Though the evidence of DDT contamination was identified as early as 1948, and research indicating that the chemical might be harmful to humans began surfacing in the 1950s, blacks who lived close to the oiling plant and who drank the contaminated water and ate large quantities of toxic fish were not tested or alerted to the problem until 3 decades after that problem was identified. The Tuskegee experiment all over again. So I read that. In the 1980s, the CDC study revealed that Triana residents had high levels of polychlorinated bisphenols in their bloodstreams. The discovery of the PCBs in residents' bloodstream triggered a search for the source of the cancer-causing agent, but no major source of PCBs were found. See? So one group knew, but wouldn't say anything. The reason no major sources were found is likely because the major source was the U.S. Army, who, at that same time, was poisoning black residents of Anniston, Alabama, with PCBs. See? So during World War II, DDT was a chemical weapon. U.S. Army Chemical Warfare Service field officers sprayed the insecticide aimed at elimination of bugs, lice, and mosquitoes carrying malaria, typhus, and in the European and Pacific theaters. The atomic bomb and DDT were the two technological icons of the Second World War. The War Production Board secured mass production of insecticide, and DuPont and Monsanto were the biggest producers of DDT for the military during the war. After the war, DDT was repurposed, quickly approved by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and USDA The stockpiles of DDT held by the DuPont for military use entered the domestic front largely untested. This is where we're getting our cancer from, y'all. Here's the source. So this is identified. We got a big cancer rising in the United States. Where is it coming from? So this testing seems to have occurred covertly. So basically, during the World War II, DDT was a chemical weapon used in warfare service. They sprayed it on. So they sprayed this stuff on plants to get rid of bugs, lice, so they could go to war during World War II. So once they finished the war, the U.S. Department of Agriculture approved the DDT. Now they can use it domestically. They sprayed it on all our food, right? All our parents' food, our grandparents' food in the 70s. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture, again, the testing seems to have occurred covertly and with black test subjects. DDT was released for public sale in 1945. In 1946, the U.S. Public Health Service, the Tuskegee experiment, initiated a domestic use campaign that clearly targeted black areas because by 1967, as shown in numerous studies, black males nationally were reported as having 2 to 4 times the amount of DDT in their blood and tissues than whites. Triana, Alabama was no isolated phenomenon, meaning they were doing this in other places and this just happened to get found out. Triana, Alabama was no isolated phenomenon. DDT poisoning clustered in black areas around the country. In a national survey for the years 1973, 1974, and 1975, collecting sites in 48 states, blacks had twice the levels of serum DDT than whites. DDT was thus a chemical warfare weapon, first targeting bugs, then targeting black peoples. Dang. Then targeting, after the war, redeployed against blacks. Food from gender-bending waters. And what are the consequences of sufficient DDT poisoning? For starters, arthritis, breast cancer, and diabetes, but also here the Los Angeles Times. In the gender-bending waters of Lake Apopka, alligators aren't quite male. They aren't quite female either. They may be both or neither. Now that's deep. In the gender-bending waters of Lake Apopka, alligators aren't quite male. They aren't quite female either. They may be both or neither. The sexual confusion in the wild discovered in the steamy Florida swamp last year is so disturbing to scientists that they keep performing test after test on the scaly reptiles, trying to prove themselves wrong. But the more they look, the more evident they find. In fact, hardly any young alligator with normal sexuality can be found in this vast lake on the suburb outskirts of Orlando. Elsewhere around the world, the same astonishing phenomenon turning up in a menagerie. What the heck? Let's see what this is. Pardon me while I look this up, because usually I don't like passing up words that I can't understand. Hold on a second. Press the thumbs up button, guys. Put some comments down if you see this.
Menagerie.
A menagerie. A menagerie. So a menagerie is a place where animals are kept and trained especially for exhibition. A collection of wild or foreign animals kept especially for exhibition. A variety mixture, a menagerie of comedians. Okay, so it can be used for animals and comedians and people. A menagerie of grotesque statues. So basically, a random collection. So, elsewhere around the world, the same astonishing phenomenon is turning up in a menagerie of fish, birds, and other wild animals. Testosterone levels have plummeted in some males, while females are supercharged with estrogen. Both sexes are born with a penis and ovaries, and some males wind up so gender warped they try to produce eggs. Wow. Everything is really fouled up. It is indeed real and is scary, said Tim Gross, a University of Florida wildlife endocrinologist on the team that discovered effeminized alligators. We didn't want to believe it, in all honesty. This is no fluke of Mother Nature, no quirk of evolution. This is probably a legacy of pollution. So we need to remember that. This is a legacy of pollution. So when we're talking about homosexuality and choice, and we're talking about situations in America, and we're arguing about these things, we can't forget pollution. And that's what's missing from the conversation. Wildlife scientists have uncovered pervasive evidence that artificial pesticides and industrial chemicals are infiltrating wombs and eggs, where they send false signals imitating or blocking hormones which control sexuality. Although the parent are unharmed, their embryos' sexual development is disrupted, and some male offsprings are left chemically castrated and females sterile. The potential consequences of if unabated, are almost unthinkable. And keep in mind, this is back in the day in Florida before they made it normal, before they normalized this stuff. And now, we're dealing with the Florida governor down there, and I guess that's Tallahassee, Gillum. Guess what he was caught up in? He was caught up in a situation of homosexual and drugs, homosexuality and drugs, and that's interesting. Let's look at this here. Hold on a second. You know what? I have not even been sharing this stuff. Hold on a second, guys. I'm sorry. This whole what's up? Oh, I know why. Y'all can't see because I'm on the wrong one. Hold on a second. What's up? What's up? I can't share my screen because y'all don't. It's not on the. Anyway, well, we know Andrew Gillum is Let me see something here. Oh, there it is. There you go. So you can see Andrew Gillum running over here, and it's kind of funny how Abrams, who's gay, Abrams, who's gay, and Andrew Gillum, that we're just now finding out was funny as well. You know, this is creeping up into our generation, though, and it's not about. It's not about shaming people because people are having these issues but we're thinking, these issues didn't pop up as much before. Who knows? Who knows? And I'll put the link for this whole report here, guys. I'm sorry you couldn't see. I thought I was reading it, so I thought I had it on the wrong screen. But let me show you where this town is. Triana, Alabama. Yeah. See? Yep. So basically, it's at the northern side of Alabama. Polluted as hell. Says the highest level of DDT ever recorded. Residents of Triana, predominantly African American, have been eating fish from a local contaminated river of DDT for the last 50 years. The Oil Corporation at the U.S. Army's Redstone's Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, manufactured DDT between 1947 and 1970. So anytime they're manufacturing some dangerous chemical stuff around you and you're in a black area, you best believe they're thinking about experiment on you. And I think this is one of the doctors this woman, Padma Tadi Upla. I don't know if she's Indian or not, but yeah. She, see if I can show y'all that picture. That's her name. Paddy Tadley Up UPPLA Upala. And she is the epidemiologist. Anyway, let me get back to this report so we can be done with this. All right. Finish this out. This everywhere, y'all. Yeah, make sure y'all what do y'all think about that? You know, you got the US Army killing you. What can we do about that? Do y'all feel powerless to do anything with that? We could separate. How would it work? How will you separate? What is your plan? See, black people, our ability to survive stuff is literally killing us, because just because if you can survive something until it kills you, you just stay there, stay still. The concept of gentrification is your solution. The fact that we were able to get Fair Housing Act, we can get loans, we can buy properties in any state. We have to take over areas. But when we take over those areas, we have to control that area through the so when we do vote, we vote our people to control those areas. We don't want army residents and army pollution sites around our living quarters. You see, so that should be our plan. We have to gentrify areas and then control those areas. We can't sell out because as soon as they see us, they first of all they can't stop you from moving where you want to move, especially if enough of us begin doing that in clusters. Associations, you have to join some kind of organization so you guys can work it out together, and then we can make money doing that because the people can become real estate and specialists. But you have to do it with the type of people who have the mindset of control. You can't because they white people will sit up there and they'll offer you 4, 5, 6 times the value of a property just to get into that area because they know what's going on. But that's what we have to do. We have to begin to populate and control particular areas of this country, and that's how we begin to control our destiny. But let me finish some of this off here. So the wildlife scientists have uncovered pervasive, yeah, basically that was scary to them. So they found those alligators and they were not male, female, or anything. And that's down there in Florida. And like I said, you showing your governor down there, he's all kind of funny style, or at least he's a mayor of Tallahassee. The alligator population of Lake Apopka, Florida, crashed in 1990 because the alligators were changing sex. 80% of the male 80% of the male gators showed some form of sex reversal. Blood tests revealed that the male alligators had high levels of estrogen and lower levels of testosterone. The cause in the 1980s, the tower chemical let a waste pond overflow and spilled into the lake, pouring large amounts of DDT into the lake. The alligators were exposed to DDE, which is DDT is a metabolite, meaning that it's just a product. It's just a product of DDE, and which is an anti-androgen, meaning it attacks testosterone, it attacks the male hormones. So basically 90% of the alligators disappeared. The gator penis was 75% shorter than normal, and the testosterone levels were so low that the gators hormonally resembled females. Nancy McVacar, the Sun Sentinel, referred to these gators as nature in drag. And we see what they're doing here with us now, right? This is a way they can kill you without straight up killing you. Commercial DDT is composite of two chemicals, DDT, which is estrogenic, and PPDDT. Oh my goodness, let me get this out of here. Which is anti-androgenic. So OP-DDT is estrogenic, and PP-DDT is anti-androgenic. So DDT is going to destroy whatever testosterone you have, and it's going to replace it with estrogen type. It is believed that DDT exposure lowers sperm counts in men, contributes to prostate and testicular cancer as well. DDT contamination off the coast of Los Angeles and in Lake Michigan crashed the seagull and herring gull populations because the males were being born dead or hermaphrodites, having both testes and ovaries. DDT is blamed for the missing or neutralized males. Female gulls thus started pairing and nesting with each other in what we would call lesbian relationships. Sound familiar? Yeah. And it is black people who are most exposed to DDT, as well as BPA, PCBs, PM, all of this and more. So all of this stuff has a synergistic effect on us, right? Because it's not just DDT by itself. It's the PCPs, it's the fire retardants. It's all of that stuff. Even more disturbing is the fact that DDT is epigenetic effects. It has epigenetic effects, which means that the stuff that was affecting your parents in 1979, it goes into your kids. It goes into us, which deliver their consequences to future generations. In 2013, Michael Skinner, a professor at Washington State University and founder director of the Center for Reproductive Biology and School of Biological Science, and his team published research showing that direct exposure to DDT left mice with a slightly elevated rate of a certain disease. But by the time those mice had grandchildren, more than 50% of the male mice developed obesity. In fact, Skinner's research found that DDT left 90% of the progeny of the mice originally exposed more likely to develop obesity. They experience lower sperm counts or contract other even more serious health conditions. This pattern continued through 4 generations to the great grandchildren of the mice. That sounds like the Bible, right? That sounds like something in the Bible. So basically, when they got this epigenetic effect on these mice, the sickness, it stayed to 4 generations there. So it affected the children. And that's why a lot of our kids are being born and they're growing up differently than we did. All right, so this is almost it. So DDT is killing Lake Michigan, co-host scientists say. So this poisonous food and drink that we are now eating, and DDT, which is sprayed on food while it is growing up from the earth, is also a poison that should not be put into the human body, regardless of the desire to kill the insects that love to dine on the same food that we dine on. But DDT poison, so that was the news story, and you can look at that. And Dr. Wesley puts all of the, if you want to research these articles, the footnotes are all there. But DDT poison is not restricted to Alabama and Chicago salmon. Alabama catfish and Chicago salmon, and salmon in general. It is even more contaminated. It was reported in 1969 that the coho salmon of Lake Michigan was contaminated with DDT and PCBs. We know that state governments were not adverse to deliberately dumping such toxic chemicals near Lake Michigan. Marla Cohn reported in 2009, the most contaminated wildlife on Earth, killer whales in the Pacific Northwest, are picking up nearly all of their chemicals from Chinook salmon in polluted oceans off the West Coast, according to new scientific study. While PCBs are the main contaminant of the Pacific salmon that the killer whales dine on, DDT is the main contaminant of the salmon that we land creatures consumed. In 2009, Arnold uh, Schletcher, whatever his name is, Arnold Schletcher of the University of Texas and his colleagues studied the food contamination from 5 supermarkets in Dallas, Texas, testing for about 50 chemicals and 310 food samples representing 31 different food types. They found that the highest level of chemical contamination of the food was from DDT, and that salmon was contaminated, the most contaminated food sample. Emily Alert writings in Scientific American notes as well. Farmed fish are even more contaminated. A 2004 study found that farmed salmon contain 10 times higher levels of persistent organic pollutants than wild salmon. The source of the pollutants, said Dr. David Carpenter, director of the Institute for Environmental Health at the University of Albany in New York, is the contaminated mixture of fish fats and proteins in the fish meal. So, black folks, let's get it together. Let's get our stuff together. Let's get working on our health. Of course, they poison everything. That's not an excuse to just give up and say forget it and throw your health to the wind. The way you can help to clean yourself out is through fasting, is through at least mitigating. See, just like they did the coronavirus, they gave up on containment, and they switched to mitigating. So it's just a matter of how much you get into your body, because your body is able to clean it out. But how much are you going to put in there? How much are you going to let travel down to the generations, to your kids, right? So this is what we got to deal with. This is war by zip code. This is what they're doing. This is what this enemy is doing. Waging war by zip code. How food in black neighborhoods is weaponized. So this is what's happening out here. Go ahead and tell me what you guys think about it. Leave your comments down there. And, peace.